All right, welcome back. Part 2 now. We're going to jump into talking about the specifics of the deadlift versus the back squat. So if we consider the back squat to be 100%, which is what we go off of with the numbers, we want deadlift to be, back squat to be 100%. And then from there, we want the deadlift to be approximately 120 to 125% of what we can back squat. Now, for the sake of errors and different all the different things that can come into play when we're working with a group and not having as many metrics or parameters on the group, I did extend the range a little bit when working at the numbers. So I stretched it out in each direction where we went from 116% to 129% that we considered individuals to fall into balance. And while we had over 90 of you that submitted scores over the 3 weeks of testing, we actually only had 28 individuals for whom we had both the back squat and the deadlift numbers. So we're working off a small population here relative, but nonetheless, just you can use this in mind as you look at your own numbers going forward. So we had 8 people of the 28 that fell into the category of that balanced range, that extended range, 116 to 129. We had 13 of you that fell into a range that would indicate that your back squat is dominant than your deadlift, which means that your percentage was under 116%. And then we had 7 of you that showed you had some dominance in the deadlift where you're more than 129% of your back squat. So if you watched the first video, I mentioned that when I first started learning about strength balance, I had an imbalance. At that time, I had a 240-pound deadlift, 155-pound back squat, which created a percentage of 154%. Now, if I wanted to find out what my back squat should be to be balanced that 240-pound deadlift, I took 240 divided by 1.25, and that gives me 192 pounds. So needless to say, when I learned about this information, I stopped doing that emphasis on deadlift and switched gears and put more emphasis on squatting so that I could kind of close that gap. And thankfully, I haven't had any major back issues since then. And just that's been a common theme as you help people to come into range of balance, and no one's ever going to be perfectly balanced. But if you can kind of close that down, we typically find that people that are experiencing chronic pain or pain in the joints, they're usually more than about 20% outside of that ideal range. So I usually use kind of like an 80% rule as a general factor. So if you are someone that falls outside of that range, if you are stronger in your deadlifting, it doesn't mean that you should not come on deadlift days. Or if you're stronger in back squatting, it doesn't mean that you should stop back squatting, but it's where you put your emphasis. I definitely would recommend that you still participate in group classes. You still come on all the regular days, get a good mix of exposure to your body. However, if you know that you're stronger in one lift versus the other, then the lift that you're strong in, focus on really good technique. Ensure you're doing full range of motion. Focus on good control, and maybe don't push the load too much until you can kind of close the gap. And then on the area that you need to improve, look to put a little bit more emphasis on that area. Obviously, you still want to have good form and technique. You don't want to sacrifice that just to try to move more weight. But that's where you want to put your emphasis. You can also utilize the cash out exercises in a way that would help you to close that gap. So if you need to improve at deadlifting, look to get better at hinging exercises. So whether you're doing actual deadlifts, maybe kettlebell or suitcase deadlifts, maybe you're doing some single leg deadlift work. If you need to improve on squatting, maybe you're focusing on single leg work, squatting in different ways like that. All right, so just some main things to pay attention to. Where do your numbers fall? What can you pay attention to within your own body? All right, next we're going to talk about the side plank, and I'm just going to keep this connected because this is really important, especially in regards to these two categories, the deadlift and the back squat. So for the side plank, we're looking to acquire a minimum of 90 seconds per arm. And I know depending upon where you fall in that category, if you're like, man, I'm just trying to hold 20 seconds right now, that might feel like a really long ways away. but it's just a good marker to focus on. And that number in the side plank actually came out of the rehab world. An individual named Stu McGill, he's out of Canada. He did a lot of research showing people's spinal injuries and did testing on who had adequate core strength. And they found that people that were having chronic back pain had an inadequacy and an ability to hold a side plank. And those side planks really help support the spine because it holds a lot of our stabilizer muscles of our core, or doesn't hold, it provides endurance with those stabilizer muscles, which is going to be really key, especially in CrossFit. If you're doing a bunch of kettlebell swings, if you're doing a bunch of power cleans, you're doing deadlifting, squatting, all the different things that you need to be able to stabilize your spine, you're going to need to have a stronger base of support. And the better your planks are, front planks and side planks, that's all going to help kind of elevate everything up. So those of you that are like, oh man, I really need to get better at that, work on your planks. The planks are a fantastic exercise that you can be working on at home. And also, you know, we talk about side planks, but also front planks. So that forearm plank, we look to be able to do about 2 minutes of a forearm plank with good technique to build that endurance and that stamina over time. So that's all for this video. We're going to come back with one more to talk about the upper body push and pull.